Okay, I will repeat the question I was asking myself and that I want to solve in the second part of this presentation. In what sense, let's say, what we have understood that the main ideological influence on Cosgrove from Marian and from Orozco, in what sense this is translated in his painting? And is it possible even to find a kind of a common denominator, I would say, to the three genres that he have exploited, like landscape and still life and portrait? If there is any link there with this idea of a kind of national art, but also rather more modern type of art. I will show you in succession a few landscape to start with of Cosgrove, about always on the same theme, because indeed there is, you remember I told you in the beginning that one of the accusations we do against Cosgrove, it is this repetitive aspect of his painting, and when you can see many of them, you cannot avoid to think of it, is it really repetitive? But I think he went toward a kind of an essence of the landscape, and inside of that, he allowed himself just minimal type of variation from one to the other. And he went further. I don't know if I'll find a quotation in my papers here easily. He went further to say, repetition is what painting is all about. Repetition of themes, repetition of subject matter, paint. That's all the painter wants to do. And this is not very usual in modern art to hear that. You know, habitually people, in the contrary, you have to renew yourself, you have to be original, you should not repeat yourself. But since he's around a kind of a very basic type of image, I would say that inside of that, he could introduce some small variation, but not much. Okay, so this is one painting which is called Sentinels, Hudson. So Hudson, of course, make allusion to the place where he used to live up to very recently, and it's a picture of 1960. Most of them, of course, that I present here are from private collectors. They are reproduced in books by Monsieur Broquet, who unfortunately died recently, but he was a great fan of Cosgrove, and he was an editor also, and Marcel Broquet, and he made a few albums about his painting like that. Okay, so that's one. Sentinels, of course, it's a way to describe the trees, if you want. It's a way to call the trees. They are like sentinels. Remember what I told you about the theme of the forest, as how important it is in a way. Like in Harris, for instance, the forest is destroyed, it's dead in a way, to reveal the sky. But here you have exactly the opposite idea. The forest becomes like the main theme and hide the sky, indeed, but becoming like kind of shelter in which any Canadian could find his place in a way. I think I find this picture comfortable in a way. We don't know where it is because, okay, Hudson, it could be any place. In fact, there's no, they are not easily localizable, but they speak right away to a feeling of a Canadian for whom the forest is an entity, something that in which you feel good. After all, we're all more or less coureurs des bois, like, especially French Canadian, and so we could relate to this. Look, another one is called Morning Fog of 1960. Again, with the same type of themes. The variation, of course, is with color, with maybe the depth, the kind of three-dimensional effect that he can do. But again, it's the forest hiding the sky. And as I told you, this is kind of humanistic type of theme. It's not anti-religious, but it's not concerned with religion. It's concerned with humanity. With if you save the forest, you save the humanity also. There's a kind of link there that Cosgrove was sensitive to. Sometimes in his drawings, you see that even preparatory drawings are very close also to the finished painting. There are sketches like this that he did. I will show you a few of them, and you will see, again, this kind of, always this interest in this kind of enclosure in which you could be at ease, you could be, and then the more you think of it, this type of theme, this forest, who's humanistic, if you want, is closer to this idea of a national heart, because this is really a forest that speaks of human history and of history of people living here. But it's not, of course, obvious like historical painting or like, say, with like Marian will have liked his students to do. You see, with Jacques Cartier coming and some jizz with the Indians and things like that. But it goes, I guess, to the essence of it, to the kind of relation to not so much the land, but to the forest as such, as a kind of human place in which it's almost small, always it's never too big, it's never seen at a too much big distance. It have nothing of grandiosity or sublime like you have in the, like in the Harris or other group of 7 painting. But on the other hand, it speaks in certain way of a certain history, of certain relation to the land. Other example, let's see. This one is called Sur l'île d'Anticosti. If I give a French title to this one, on the island of Anticosti. Okay, you see the river and then the other side. But again, you find these same trees, the same type of construction is vertical and horizontal. And look in, no, I will go back. And I want to show you in parallel a little sketch that he used to do like this to make the essence, let's say, of this idea. And what he's noting, it's well, let's say La Tuque and the place, but also just the color, like gray, purple, pink, bitter green or what? Yeah, bottle green, yeah, and plum. Just a notation of color, little sketch like this, which is based almost on the same type of picture that I show you there. But here's La Tuque, there's Anticosti, as if the localization is not important. It's always the same type of theme that is looking about, with this little composition sketch. And have I another example? Maybe, yeah. Another one, you see, based also on the same type of structure with the river and another side. And you have, like, when he says repetition is what painting is all about, you have hundreds of pictures of Cosgrove are like this. Look, I'll show you maybe 5, but imagine that you see variation of this kind inside always of the same structure. Okay, but you see there is a certain link in a way with the idea of national art. What about the still life? This is one of the rare still life that was done in Mexico that we know of. It's called 3 Mangoes. Of course, with the subject matter, this is a thing you could do in Mexico. But again, you go to very basic, very simple type of thing with the type of color that you will have in fresco. But let's say to my demonstration, I would like to see a more recent one. This one is called the 5 Green Apples of 1958. And paint on Masonite, again, a little painting. And of course, we have to be careful with still life, because at first sight, they look like dealing with subject matter who's not very crucial, is not very important. If you have not read it, you should read the book of Norman Bryson, Looking at the Overlook. And it's about still life painting, and Bryson explained well why it is overlook. Let's say, still life have always been very ambivalent in the art historical tradition. On one hand, it's a genre, accepted as such, and having a lot of amateur of still life, people like this and all that, but always have been kept in a kind of low grade. You have at the top, of course, religious painting, historical painting, then you have landscape, if you want, and then finally still life. Still life is considered like art, but not like great art. Always, and in the antiquity, let's say, it's interesting to see how the painters who were dealing with this type of painting were called by let's say, the Greek at the time, even Pliny called them that way, riparographos, or riparographein, if you use the verb. Riparos in Greek means anything déchet. garbage, anything was not waste, let's say, anything of that kind. And so the painter of still life was a painter of something from waste, of some garbage, something not, certainly not high in the hierarchy of value. And Pliny, who called them that way, says, nevertheless, these guys make a lot of money because people like it. But you have this kind of ambivalence between the type of subject matter who's despised, and on the other hand, well, it's a form of art, and sometimes artists show their skill with still life, because you could right away see and of course, when there is a kind of hierarchization like this, when you become to say, well, this is great art and this is not so important art, then it's always, of course, culture who decide that. Like Bryson says, he says, every one of us lives our life in the orbit of basic routine of self-maintenance. We have to cook, we have to eat, we have to shop, to see to some domestic chores, keeping our creatural habitat in viably good repair. So this, everybody, but to decide that this is despiteful or less important, this is a cultural decision, of course. This is in certain culture, and you could guess, in patriarchal culture, this will be put down and will be seen as a feminine core and will not, will be despised. And in fact, you could say that still life is, belongs to a kind of feminine space. Because it's about food, it's about preparation of food, it's about the way to display it also. And in a way, why it's so threatening to the great art, this type of things? Because in a way, it's indestructible. The apples are there since there is trees, you see. And this type of pottery that is shown here, in a way, the form of it, have been redone so much. You could buy this today in any pottery, and you could find it in any archaeological digging that will, it's a thing that could be 2,000 years old or to be from yesterday. So in a way, you could say these form, what Cobbler called the basic form, the most common one, that a ball, a jar, a plate, or a little dish like this. These forms have been redo so many times and so, with so many variations that finally they find their perfect shape, if you want, and they are indestructible in a way. We cannot change much of them. Each culture have his style, have his form like this. They are accepted. They have been through so many erosion, if you want. It's almost like geological. So they are very stable. They are very, and in a way they are threatening because of that, because the other things are dealing with ideas, with religion, with big issues and all that. And these little objects are there to stay, and they don't change, and they are always there. And then again, you see now a connection between the interest of Cosgrove with this type of nationalism that he was about. These vessels that he collected very often are named in his picture like Bol de Port-Neuf. Why Port-Neuf? Port-Neuf is a place where there was a pottery there and have a certain style and was collected by people and have a certain, not antiquity, but let's say a certain time come from rather older. And so he will sometimes specify in the title of his picture the fact that it's from Port-Neuf. Let's see here on the left, this is Still Life with Milk Jug of 1943. In which you have these basic form, in a way, the plate, the ball, and the kind of pitcher like this on the left. These forms that you find all over in many cultures and also and in a very, very long time. And then to the one on the left, on the right, and the one I show you there are called like Bol de Port-Neuf, Assiette de Port-Neuf. In the title, he will stress the fact that these things also belongs to a specific place also. And even you could find also bol d'apothicaire, this kind of vessel that were used by pharmacists in the old days and that he have also collected and put in his still life. Then, okay, the still life is not only just a representation of food, of a display of food, but it's also an appeal to a certain tradition. And by this, it rejoins his story, and by this, I would say it's coherent with this type of landscaping that he's doing. And finally, with the representation of woman, I showed you this before, and I go back to it again, because again, you have many, many examples of these women. I described them before like serene, like peaceful, and even kind. In fact, they are motherly figure. They are mothers. They have no, they are never, let's say, sexually defined. They are always kind of almost Madonna presence. And in many cultures, you have the representation of the nation as a woman, as if also, and even as a peasant woman very often, as if you want to give certain eternity or certain stability to a concept like the nation, you associate it with woman, with woman and earth, with this kind of connection. And with time, you will see Cosgrove, he's a very old man now, and doesn't paint much, but his very last painting, you see him trying to combine this genre. What I saw in his studio, the last painting that I don't think he had finished it even, that he was working it, in which you have a landscape and a still life together. And I said, if he could have some strength and could live much more, he could probably make a kind of a synthesis of the three things together finally. They did put a woman with a still life and with a landscape. This theme of the woman, as I tell you, they are kind of motherly type of figures. They are always like this, very serene, very solid also. They don't look frail. And they are all presented like this, like a head, or even in a trois quarts like this, but always the same of mysterious presence. It seems a little bit expressionless, but on the other hand, you could project in them whatever you want. They are like icons, I would say, and they are like the icons of the nation, in a way. Maybe Cosgrove will be surprised that I look at them, because for him, certainly, they have also a kind of personal link. Some are his wife, some are his children. He have two daughters that he have painted a lot also. So he could have this thing, but subconsciously, I think it's also coherent with his main theme, with this idea of making a modern national painting. And as I told you, the very end of it is trying to combine the landscape with the still life. And the painting on the right, it is the painting I was mentioning that was on his easel recently, and really now he's too weak to really work at it. But you see, it's a little bit sad also. It is a man now who is confined inside and could not go in the landscape, and he see it through his window. But on the other hand, it's also a combination of the two themes. And as I tell you, you could imagine, like for instance, Gauguin did the combination of the theme of the woman with the land. Like in Le Christ Jaune, you have not only this idea of these peasant women are religious, but also they are on the ground. They are kneeling on the land. And so you have this connection again of the land with the peasant woman, and here with religious idea, because Gauguin thought this was part also of this idea of the French nation. So when you try to define, okay, what I wanted to do with this presentation on Cosgrove, it was to show you there was a kind of another modernity that he was proposing. I'm not sure, it's not a modernity with which I personally can be completely at ease. I try to make the best case of his painting, but remember all the ideological underpinning of all this. You see, this idea of the collectivity of the nation, of the importance of the public and all that. It is seductive ideas, but it's certainly not the main trend of modern art today, because the big issue is there. Is it the nation or is it the individual? Is it the collective or is it the person? And again, it's always the same type of struggle that we have. You have few painters who have chosen like Cosgrove, I would say, if you look at modern art. Most of the others have gone in the other direction to affirm the importance of the individual. And in that sense, Marian Scott is interesting because, in a way, she starts like Cosgrove. She is go to this Kingston conference where everybody discusses of the place of the artist in society. She wants to be a muralist. She wants to make painting that will appeal to the people. But she finally developed more and more a kind of more and more abstract style and more individual style. And in a way, is the paradox it is that you have a recluse like Cosgrove, who is more political, more collective oriented, and you have staunch politics, leftists like Marian Scott, who end up like a real individualist. And it's paradoxical, but in fact it is not. It is really the two choices that you have. So to finish, I will just evoke a little bit the work of Marian Scott and the situation. It is very difficult to teach about her because we don't have slide of her work too much. Happily, there's an excellent book published on her by Esther Trepanier, and we will make slides from the book finally, and we'll have them. But anyway, I have enough just to show you a little bit, ending the other solution, if you want. So, as I told you, they start at the same, with the same type of preoccupation in a way. This is a photo was taken at this Kingston conference that I was mentioning at the beginning, who happened also in 41, the same date, and where Marian Scott went. And you see on the right, on the left here, BLR, who is a Swiss artist but lived in Canada since a long, long time, and was the organizer of this exhibition. And here in the middle, it is A.Y. Jackson, who is sitting there. So indeed, if the exhibition of the Indépendant was a little thing in Quebec, let's say, this thing was really important in Canada. You know, you have all the artists that could go attended to this conference. And the problem was the following. They receive it in the, let's say, written by BLR, trying to say what we should discuss there. He says, is it the fault of the artist? Is it hard for hard's sake? Or is it the changing condition of the world, materialistic and mechanical, that explain the difficulty of the artists of today? Is it because the artists are in a kind of ivory tower, or is it because the world is turning too materialistic and not interested in art? Remember that 41, of course, you are during the war, so the materialism and the mechanistic aspect is very important, of course, because everybody is involved in war effort or in the army or creating things. So he has this, and he wants the people to discuss this. And he says, but he's not discouraged. He says, we have a fantastic example just in the south of the border, where you could have an art to appeal to the people. And he doesn't think of the Mexican, but he thinks of the American and of people like Benton, like Stewart, like Curry. You have seen American Gothic, let's say this picture, this type of picture that are very close to the American people, and on the other hand, are make the artists live. There is something happening. So he says, yes, in a country like ours, new and growing, what greater need than the creative mind of the artists? Our friends to the south have put to public use the imaginative minds and skill of their painters in decoration, poster, frescoes, which have brought cultural freshness and benefit to many communities. And among the people at this conference, I would show you just this is a painting by BLR, just to give you an idea of what it is. It's called La Madone de Gatineau. It's kind of a sweet title, The Madonna in Gatineau. But on the left, I show you a painting by Benton, Thomas Hart Benton, an American artist, who was invited at the Kingston conference. And of course, Benton was very vocal about frescoes and art in public places with a theme like history or city activities like here, and with this type of mise en scène like this, with many scenes juxtaposed one to the other, like jazz, if you want. And so they were all excited by this. But of course, in the United States, you have a huge organization that was called Work Progress Administration, WPA, that was hiring artists to paint a mural like this. And even you could be painting canvases in your studio, and you are visited by a kind of an inspector who look at your painting, take a note, and give you a little salary for that. Of course, in the community in New York, abstract expressionists and people like that, they used to use the same painting that they modified a little bit for the inspector. You see, when he came, there was a new personage, and then they erase it, and they put another one. And the guy was taking photos. There's tons of archives of this nature where you see that they are not moving much. But anyway, but it was a fantastic a New Deal project, if you want, at the time, where the artists could have a salary to be part of the society. And indeed, the organizer of this conference wanted to have the same system here in Canada. It didn't work, but habitually we attribute to this conference, let's say, a kind of after effect much later of the bigger involvement of the state in the arts in Canada, with the Massey report and all the and Ryu and all the report that we have, and finally we have the Canada Council and all that. But at the time, of course, nothing of that existed, and it was at that time that these ideas entered. Marian Scott was part of this conference. She was there, and she did some frescoes, let's say, for McGill University, unfortunately for one department only in the anti-chronology. And, but I don't have reproduction of that, but I could just tell you one important idea. She represents there kind of one personage in the middle of her fresco, and he's circled by a lot of let's say, cells and things that could evoke science or research, a microscope and things like that. And it's interesting that when she wants to make even a collective thing, things that represent science in a fresco, she takes as a theme the scientist as a researcher, like an individual in a way. And she could see also the artist the same way, somebody who make research, who make a contribution to the collectivity, but because he's an individual, because he's a person, not because he's serving the community like Cosgrove or Roscoe were saying. And so that will bring her to a very different style than Cosgrove. You see, she will have a whole period where she will deal with type of combination between what we could call geometric form and biomorphic form. Like the one on the left is called cells and crystal. Crystal, of course, will be more geometric, if you want, and the cells will be more the shape of living things, by definition. And then how to combine these curves and these angles and all that to make a composition that is interesting and also meaningful in terms of the discovery of science of today and all that. The other one is a combination of the same type with fossils and cells, trying like this to put together in a different way certain interests that she had at the time. And indeed, Marian Scott will finally shift toward abstraction. You have two paintings, one in 67 there, and in the other one on the right side in 73, who are untitled, one more geometric, the other more lyrical, if you want. And again, she will shift toward abstract art like this for most part of her life. She have all the quality, if you want, that we were denied to poor Cosgrove at the beginning. She renews herself all the time. She likes bold color. She has bold composition. She sees herself as an individual, as somebody who makes research, who renews herself all the time, and is certainly not there to please the public or to please the crowd, if you want. She sees her contribution as an individual more important, even if she needs some intermediary to be better understood and whatever. But she sees that the artist should contribute of his own research instead of just serving a collective ideology. And in a way, I think they don't have much to be put together. I think it's just pedagogical to put them together, to see two sides or two aspects, and to retain maybe this idea of modernités. You have many ways toward modern art, and so they are really a complete contrast, both of them. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.